Richard Cameron is on the blog, but he is overseas currently. Chris Trolley I saw here. Chris Fudge is not with us tonight. Aaron Dobson couldn't make it. Dan Redmond is not here either. But Adam Graham, our secretary, is here. Stand at the back. Yeah, give a round of applause. Abby Saunders, our treasurer. George Mawari, the president-elect. He doesn't work here. Myself, president, and Rod Potter, our past president. So to start with, I'll ask Adam Graham to come up and read off the list of guests that we have for this evening.
All right, thanks to all the guests that have come out tonight. We've got a good, big, long list here, so I'll start going through them. We've got Prasenjit Pao from Long Hill. We've got Michelle Fudge Mitchell from Long Hill as well. Hopefully I'm not butchering these too badly. We've got Neil Oska from Long Hill as well. Alexandra Thompson from NRC. Miguel Charette from Master Group. Renee Dubé from Master as well. Greg Lundy, Century. Billy Chen from HTS. Victor DeVoe from Airtron. Justin Vazeau from In-Air Environmental. Mike Hurley. Alex McCaffrey from Long Hill. Jack Sue from HTS. And Sylvain Boye. And I think we've got another page here. We've got Sandhya Goldkey from Siemens. Thank you everyone for coming out.
Thanks, Adam. Two things I wanted to mention. We have our bar that's going to stay open off to the left. You can buy bottles of wine for your table if you choose. The beer is still there as well. Secondly, George Mamari has been selling some raffle tickets for a Leaf Sens game that was donated generously by SK Sheet Metal. What we've been doing in years past is raffling off tickets for Sens and Red Blacks games to try and raise money for research promotion. It's a fund that we try to work on all year, and we have pretty lofty goals this year, and I trust George is going to meet them. So you can help him to achieve that by buying raffle tickets if you haven't yet. He'll be going table to table to try and drum up some business. Next I'll ask Adam Moons to come up. He's our membership promotion chair. Tonight's theme is membership. It's the first event of the chapter year, so we try to encourage people to come out and encourage new people to come out as well. And he'll talk a little bit about that.
Thanks everybody. Yes, this will be my 5th year as membership promotions chair for the Ottawa-Valley chapter. I'd like to thank everybody for their continued support for our chapter. Just a couple of little notes. Last year we were over double our target for new members for the Ottawa-Valley chapter, which is pretty fantastic, if I do say so myself. We also received the Green Ribbon Award for online renewals and registration. So basically what this means is our chapter is doing an excellent job of keeping everything fresh and online and technical. So rather than having to put paperwork through and to waste time in society, they really appreciate the efforts that we put forward in our website. It's excellent, very easy and interactive. So congrats to all of you for that. But more congrats to me for getting the award. A quick reminder for you all to review your online, your status, your profile with on ASHRAE.org. So you log in, check out everything that's going on, try to keep it current. We get points as a chapter for upgrading individuals from associate to full member. So if you can have a look and just make sure that everything's current, the number of years you've been working, where you're working, what your email addresses are. It just helps us keep things handy and accessible. We're going to be doing continued ASHRAE Lunch and Learns. It's been received well. We've run a few of them the last couple of years. If you have any of your firms, whether it's engineering firms or consultant firms, or contractors, or suppliers, anybody that you think might want their staff to have a little bit more information about what ASHRAE has to offer. I'd be happy to come by your offices with some lunch and explain what it is that the Ottawa-Valley chapter can provide. And I'd be happy to do that. So if you want to approach me afterwards or send me an email, I'm happy to help you out. Contact information is on the website and in the communique. And also, one new member for this month, Mr. Nicholas Cortec. That's it. I'm multifunctional. We're going to be doing a bowling social in November. It's Wednesday, November 19th. Registration is up online right now. I think there's a couple teams signed up. I'd like to have everything in by 2 weeks before, ideally a week before at the very, very latest. So if you have anybody that's interested, any teams, any offices, anybody you know, let them all know. It's $200 per foursome or $60 per individual. The entry fee includes warm-up, 3 games, shoe rental, and nachos and wings and pizza and things of that nature. So it's at the Maryville Bowling Lanes again on Wednesday, November 19th. Details are in the communique and on the website. And again, if you have any questions, by all means, just let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Adam. Keeping with the theme of the social side of ASHRAE, I wanted to mention the 2014 Stroke Play Championship. It's going to be going a week Friday, which is the 26th. We do have about a dozen entrants, which is pretty good, but the thrust of it is we have our regular scramble tournament in the spring where everyone comes out and smashes around a lot of balls and has some drinks and a bunch of prizes. This is much more informal. People come out to the Canadian, we play our own ball the way around. At the end of the day, someone did it better than everybody else and they get a little trophy. So it's really easy. Starts at 10, you're home by supper time. My understanding is that our 2-time repeat champion, Mark Perron, has pulled the plug. So he will be unavailable to play. The trophy is up for grabs. So there will be no 3-peat champion unless his boss has mercy on him. But I think that it could be open for anybody. So please, if you want to join in, it's available to register online or you can contact me directly. So the next topic on the list, I would ask Matthew Colomb to come up and talk a bit about the tabletops that Long Hill Energy is presenting.
Can anybody hear me? If I talk in the corner here? You guys hear me back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so today we've got 2 technologies. The first is the product is called HPL, and it's an electrode steam humidifier. So electrode steam, we're passing electricity through the water, and we're using that to boil it. The result is it's very efficient. It's the highest thermal efficiency of any steam humidifier. Now, Nortec has been doing this technology for many, many years. For 30 years, they've been essentially the pioneer. They've been constantly improving it to what we have today. And because of how this humidifier works, because of the maintenance, essentially we're taking out this gang, which is the cylinder, and we're replacing it every time we're maintaining the humidifier. They last for a very, very long time. And it's essentially the longest lasting steam humidifier. There's units out there that are over 30 years old that are still running today just because that cylinder is getting it. So the NHDL, this is the model that is built on floor pack. So if you were to humidify a space, you weren't going through the ductwork and you're blowing steam directly into that space. And what you see is what you get out of the box. So this is the standard NHDL. It comes with the touchscreen controller. That's really standard, and it has the AS connectivity is built in, and connectivity is built in. So it's even with all of that, it's still very economical for humidification for small medium. Over here, we have an adiabatic humidifier. So this is kind of a really small section of what it would be. You find it's in the air handler, directly to the ground, and it's an evaporative humidifier. So we're passing air through this media, it's picking up water, and the heat of vaporization is coming from the air itself. So you get humidification, but you also get cooling. So it's a technology that most people are familiar with. It's been been around for a while, but the Nortec's taken it up. It's got really nice features. There's two medias. We've got a polyester media, which is a higher end media. It has a UL 900 claim rating. And over here for more economical jobs, we've got fiber. So for evaporative, the application that we typically were online is hot, dry, but there are still applications in our climate where we can benefit from the technology, free cooling, and also get humidification. And if you look at applications where we have almost a dominant cooling load, like a data center or a place with really dense occupancy, we can benefit from this. And don't forget that when you do airside cooling, even though you are reducing that cooling load, I mean, you're dropping your relative humidity as well. So that's something to consider, and all you do that. So hopefully that's enough. I don't want to talk too much. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Terrific, thanks. The next thing, we will ask Don Weeks to come up. There's been a bit of a development from ASHRAE at a higher level, and they are merging with IAQA. Don Weeks within Air Environmental is obviously a big component of indoor air quality, and he can give a little bit more depth on that merger. So we'll give him a second to... George, do you have the password for this?
There is no password.
Yeah, enter.
Just go ahead and vote for it. Georgie boy.
That's not much. Yeah, we'll move on.
Brings out your eyes.
Okay, so, yeah, I can do it if George can get it eventually. Okay, so, first question. When was the last time that ASHRAE merged with another association? First answer gets a free raffle ticket. Anybody can think of it?
Whoa.
From me, from my own pocket, George.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
Anybody remember when the last merger was? 1924 is a bad guess. Kathy? 55? Close enough, getting real warm. Except that it isn't with the warm group, it's with the refrigeration engineers. And that was 1959. Oh, great. That's not me. Anyway, so this is a big deal for ASHRAE to merge with another association. They do it only every 55 years, okay, or thereabouts. And I was the president and now the immediate past president of the Indoor Air Quality Association. There we go. Okay, this is working. So I'm representing the Indoor Air Quality Association at the moment tonight for this meeting. At the ASHRAE meeting in Seattle, at the board meeting, I presented to the full board. Okay, great, now it's on. So this is how ASHRAE formed. Obviously, these are earlier mergers that took place, but in 1959, the American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning Engineers was formed. And that's what we all know and love and have been involved with for many, many years. So, you all know the facts about ASHRAE. You probably don't know much about the Indoor Air Quality Association. They were founded much earlier, much more recent than ASHRAE. Founded in 1995. We have over 2,500 members, 20 members in North America. It's basically a non-profit, multidisciplinary organization, as it says there, dedicated to indoor environmental quality. And we do work through education and research. And the reason why this came about is that we, IAQA, researching, prepared a request for proposal for new association management for IAQA. We're looking for somebody new. We received proposals from a number of different associations. And following a thorough review, the IAQA board selected ASHRAE's proposal. At the Seattle meeting of ASHRAE,
Board of Directors of ASHRAE voted in favor of the merger. Okay, so this is, as I said, a big deal. It doesn't happen very often. We're going to join as an independent brand under the ASHRAE corporate umbrella. So it's not your typical FEMA management service. We're going to have an independent membership roster. ASHRAE is going to be investing in the ASHRAE's brand. We're going to be obviously gaining from ASHRAE's staff and membership and chapter horsepower, which means basically, for example, here in Ottawa, we do not have an IQA chapter. We may consider doing something like that. I'm working with you guys to see if that might be something. And the reason that we're working together is because it maximizes the synergies that benefit the whole industry and the general public. So we're working together to basically improve things for everybody. So they took over the ASHRAE staff on August 15th. Right now we're in the due diligence period. We're expecting that it will last about 3 to 6 months while we review our operational data and details of the actual merger. I meet every Tuesday. This morning I met at 8 a.m. We meet every Tuesday by teleconference to talk about the merger. We're, as it says, meeting weekly. These are the folks that are involved. President of ASHRAE, Bill Bonfleck, who's the past president, the treasurer and regional director, Larry Fisher. Dr. Eva King is the first vice president of IUA, and Ross House is president, myself, and Don Herman, who's also an ASHRAE member and is a previous board member. And right now, membership will remain separate, but we may have certain ASHRAE benefits that may extend to IUA. And we may create discounts for ASHRAE or IQ members who choose to join the other organization. So, for example, rates for ASHRAE right now is $199. For IQA is $175. What if we put together a price for $250, where you can have membership in both organizations? Might be something that might be appealed to a certain number. So that would be something that we're working on. We have an annual convention, which we'll have next year in Grapevine, Texas. We're meeting with the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. We usually attract about 1,000 people to that conference. Obviously, it's a much bigger conference, as you know, in Chicago in January. And if anybody's been there knows it attracts over 40,000. So we don't know, in 2016 whether or not we're going to have a separate conference or whether we're meeting at the same time as the winter conference. So that's still to be decided. But will they become one chapter? ASHRAE, for example, in Toronto, there is an IQA chapter and there's an ASHRAE chapter. They're already talking together, talking about joint meetings, talking about whether or not they become one chapter or they become separate chapters. Right now, we're probably going to stay separate for the time being. We're going to provide support to each other in terms of this. So, there's a lot of things that we have to work out the details, but we're working on it diligently, and it's really quite exciting. And so I wanted to present that tonight. George?
Is there an Ottawa chapter?
I've already know, but I'm thinking that might be something I might be interested in. And I'm looking to see if I can work something on that basis. But right at the moment, I know there are people who are IQA members who are here in Ottawa, and I'd like to make an offer that we could maybe have a joint meeting to talk about what we might have in common. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone on this. Thank you.
So if anybody wants more information on that, feel free to talk to Don directly, and I'm sure he'll keep us appraised as that merger continues. Adam Moons had mentioned before keeping your online information up to date with ASHRAE. We have Bob Kilpatrick here from NRC. He is our Awards and Nominations Committee Chair, and he's going to take a couple minutes and direct you through online live how to do that. So if you all can pay reasonable attention, hopefully take care of that when you get home tonight. It helps keep us up to date on what you're up to.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, Adam and I probably should have prepared notes before we did this because I'm here to talk about the same topic, but I'm going to go a step further than Adam did, and I'm going to show you how, as opposed to just telling you to do it. Actually, Abby's going to show you how. I've recruited her to help me out with this. So the reason that I'm urging you to do this, as chair of the awards committee along with other related duties, as most of you know, the chapter makes annual awards like the LOS Award. We have a student award that we award annually. We have an anniversary award that's awarded on a 5-year basis. But probably, or maybe lesser known, there's a bunch of awards that are available through ASHRAE, but I'll call them like self-nominated awards as chapters. They're out there, but we don't often take advantage of them because I'll call them sort of technical in nature, meaning that you have to have a certain number of points achieved, and that's mainly achieved through participation either at the chapter level, regional level, society level, and the best way for us to be able to zero in on someone who we think would be someone that our chapter could nominate for these awards is through your biological information, or your, I guess that's what it's called, bioinformation, and it has all the details about your, well, certain details about yourself, but certainly about your ASHRAE career, let's call it. So we're just going to walk through this, like I said, and I don't know if your experience is like mine, but sometimes I'm looking for stuff on the ASHRAE.org site, and it's not terribly intuitive all the time in terms of where to go to find stuff, and I find myself wandering among those banners sometimes, because each one of them has several categories under them, and it's like, how come this isn't easier? But anyway, so we're going to walk through this one, so no excuses now for not updating your bio. So, ASHRAE.org, first step. Second step, log in with, oh, get out. What have you done, Abby? So Abby's going to log in as herself, we think. And everybody should have an ASHRAE.org login, but if you don't, it's your email address, that's your login name. And then you either have an existing password, which you probably forgot if you haven't done this for a while, but there's a place where it says, forgot my password or need a password, and that actually is fairly intuitive, so you can follow that and you can do that. Okay, so now that you're logged in, go to the rightmost banner there, membership and conferences, my membership, right there. And then update your bio. Oh, and by the way, just if you get that far and forget everything you saw tonight, here's how you actually do it. And there's a PDF there of instructions you actually print out and keep with you as you do this. So once you're in there now, you've got a whole bunch of headers, starting with the opening one there, bio information. And that is, we'll call it kind of boilerplate stuff that I think it's entered through society, so you can't really, well, you should be able to edit this, but Abby and I were playing around with this. Yeah, we were playing around with this today because I'll show you some others where you can edit, and it's clear you can edit because there's a tab on the right-hand side that says Add. This one doesn't say that, but you would think logically, well, I should be able to edit where I work, for example, if I change job. But our little experiment was, you make a change, it'll save the change, but then you can't go back and undo it, let's say. So, Abby has no middle name now, sorry about that. Yeah, so that's an example of one, I think. Yeah, that's right. Oh, the other one too that you can edit is education and professional. Yeah, so here's the little box that says add, so you can actually go in and change stuff. And actually, just click on one of those. I think it'll. Yeah, so it opens that up box. You can just add some stuff there. And some of the other ones that you can edit to, like there's again, it's fairly straightforward, but there's a little sort of pencil that you can use to edit stuff, or an X where you delete it. But it gives you a chance to. It asks you, are you sure you want to do it? But so anyway, that's kind of how this all works. And like I said, it's really important. Yeah, that's right, because in these for some of these award criteria, like it's all kind of based on like how many years were you on the committee, or chair of a committee, or on the board of governors, and all that sort of stuff. So you have to kind of collect all this information and from here, but it has to be there for someone like me to go and look at or for us to get reports on this, I should say. Like I can't go in and look at your profile, but reports on this sort of thing from society, and then we can see likely candidates for these boards. Yeah, that's one thing we want to say too. If you're like me and you knew you did something sometime in the past, couldn't remember what the years were, go to the Ottawa-Valley site under Historical Committee, and there is a document there that has a history of everybody that was involved with everything related to the ASHRAE Ottawa-Valley chapter. So just go through there and find yourself, and go back to the update area and put that information in there. I think that's it. Anybody have any questions? Like I said in my article that I put in the community, if you're serious about doing this, and we hope you are because it's important, by all means, just give me a call and I can walk you through it like on the phone or something, because I know it pretty well now, but I've had practice. So. Thanks a lot, everybody.
And just to reiterate his point, we have a lot of volunteers here at the Ottawa-Valley chapter who have dedicated a lot of time, and while no one donates their time and volunteers with ASHRAE with the expectation of reward, we do want to show our appreciation. This is one of the ways that we can do it. So please, if you've been volunteering, update your bio, let us make sure that we can get you the recognition you deserve for your hard work. So the last item before we get into dinner, I'd ask, 1 second here. Yeah, right on the fold. Andrew Patterson from Nortec to come up. He's going to take a few minutes and just talk about humidification in general, and after that we will continue to the buffet.
All right, good evening, everybody. A little bit later than I thought I was going to be getting on here, so I know all you guys are hungry. So I'm going to zoom through this stuff. We have time for questions at the end, or you can come talk to me afterwards. But I'm just going to spend about 10 minutes giving you guys an introduction to humidity. My name is Andrew Patterson, and this is actually my first time at an Ottawa-Valley chapter meeting. So thank you guys for your hospitality, and it's nice to be here. So the agenda for today, what is humidity? We'll start with that, talk about some applications for humidity, for humidification, and then finish off with different types of humidifiers that satisfy these applications. First of all, what is humidity? Absolute humidity is the mass of water in a particular volume of air. You guys probably don't deal with that definition so often as you do relative humidity, which is the amount of water vapor in the air relative to the maximum amount of water vapor that the air can hold at that given temperature. And those little brackets at that given temperature is very, very key because air can hold different amounts of moisture depending on the temperature that it's at. To kind of reiterate this point a little bit, assume we have a small little glass representing a volume of air at 2 degrees Celsius. We fill that up to represent 100% RH. If we were to put that into a different glass that represents a bit of a higher air temperature, 22 degrees, the RH from that same amount of moisture or vapor or water is only going to produce 25% RH. And again, that's just because air at a higher temperature has a greater propensity or capacity to hold moisture in it. So the humidity ratio is a way that we express humidity in absolute terms. It's the ratio of mass of water vapor to the mass of dry air. Examples of this are grains of moisture per pound of dry air, and that term grains is a unit of measurement that goes way back when they used to use a grain of barley, I think it is, as a standard unit of measure. Pounds of moisture per pound of dry air, or what's typical in Europe is grams of moisture per kilogram of dry air. So there's some different ways to talk about absolute humidity. If we add that to our scenario here, again, we have that same 2 degree air at 100% RH. And if we put it into the cup representing air at a higher temperature, we still get that decrease in relative humidity, but you can see from the left and the right-hand side the absolute humidity, the absolute quantity of moisture or water in that air volume is the same. So that's the difference between relative humidity and absolute humidity. So if we were to plot this on a scale, we can see on the x-axis increasing air temperatures, and on the y-axis increasing humidity ratio. We see that this relationship isn't linear, it's exponential, and if we plot our points here, the maximum amount of moisture that air at 2 degrees Celsius would be able to hold is around 30 grams per pound. At 22 degrees Celsius, it's a little bit more, at 120 grams per pound. And so you can see that if you were to put water in that gets air at 2 degrees Celsius at 100% RH, put that into the cup at 22 degrees, you can see that it's a lot less as far as the relative humidity scale is concerned. So this graph here, some of you guys, it might start triggering some happy or maybe sad thoughts in your head, because this is obviously the psychrometric chart. So hands up if you guys have used in your job in the last month the psychrometric chart. Okay, maybe 50%, so that's good. I had no idea what kind of reaction that was going to get, so 50%, that's good. Okay, so that's relative and absolute humidity. You guys are now experts on that. Applications for humidification. Typically 35 to 60% is that ideal range. We're going to talk about why that's a good range for your RH to be in. In general, people are healthier and happier. Materials show increased strength and greater dimensional stability. And finally, there's finally for this presentation, lower electrostatic charge. So I was even chatting with some people before this session about where it is or when it is that we need humidification. Here in Ottawa, we have really hot and really humid summers, which I absolutely love, kind of dreading what's coming around the corner, but summers are great. We don't need humidification in that case because the air is so hot and so humid. In that case, we need dehumidification. But in most every geographical area, once the temperature starts to get pretty low, your building is grabbing that outside air that's at a pretty low temperature, heating that up to typically around 70 degrees F or 21 degrees C. And there's a corresponding decrease in relative humidity. To read this chart, assume we have outdoor air temperature at minus 18 degrees, so it's winter here in Ottawa, and that air is coming in at 50% RH. When we heat that air up after it's entered the building to 21 degrees, a more comfortable spot, the RH drops automatically to 3%, and that's like a desert, 3% RH. So we see that when the air is cold outside, we automatically have a need for humidification to get it into that range of 30, 35 or more percent RH. Another way this is described is the Stirling chart. Some of you, or many of you, have maybe seen this before. You see the optimum zone. In this case, they're talking 40 to 60%. And you see on the x-axis here, percent relative humidity, starting from 0 and going all the way up to 100. You see in the far reaches of this zone, that's where you have increased bacterial growth, viruses, fungi, and all sorts of other things that wreak havoc on our health and our happiness. Increased RH, or I should say more stable RH, between 35 and 60%, is good for things like paper. Paper is a hygroscopic material, so it absorbs the water. Textiles and yarn, and materials like that, and wood as well. If you guys have hardwood at home, typically the manufacturer is going to say that you need to keep the RH within a certain bound in order for the warranty to be valid, because that material needs a particular RH. And finally, electrostatic discharge. A factory just like this one, you may see people walking across carpet, vinyl floor, work grinder bench, doing all sorts of things that happen typically in an assembly factory like this one. You can see the massive electrostatic voltages that happen just from those simple tasks. At 10 to 20% RH, so this is maybe a cold winter day here in Ottawa, if we didn't have any humidification, you'd be getting 35,000 volts generated just from walking across a carpet. So if you're working on electronics, that is a recipe for disaster. You can see how those values decrease when you get the RH higher, 65 to 90%. Now, humidity isn't the only way to safeguard for electrostatic discharge. You obviously need to do all the other things, but humidity is a great start. So that renders to a variety of different applications. Data centers typically between 20 and 80% for these reasons. Same with electronics assembly. Textiles, we talked about that a little bit, just to make sure that there's structural integrity in those fibers. Laboratories for process control. Pharmaceuticals, same thing. Automotive industry, electrostatic discharge, and also paint booths is another application where they need very high relative humidity in those areas for the paint to adhere well. Woodworking for dust suppression and again dimensional stability of the wood. And museums, libraries, 40 to 50%. In this case, traveling exhibits, they'll actually request or require that a certain museum where that exhibit is going is in that range, or else there's going to be artifact degradation and that kind of thing. So museums really need to be in a particular RH range. So finally, the types of humidifiers, looking again at the psychrometric chart, two different categories, isothermal and adiabatic. So if we start with our outdoor air condition at A, in order to get to our final set point design condition of B, for an isothermal humidifier, you're not going to add any heat in the humidification process, or I should say you're not going to increase the temperature. So we are going to get added heat into that air from a heating coil or something like that. And from that, our isothermal humidifier is going to get the air from point B to point D. Conversely, an adiabatic humidifier, it was mentioned a little bit briefly, but there is a bit of a decrease in temperature along with that humidification that happens. So in this case, our entering air conditions are going to be A. We're going to heat it up all the way past design set point because we're going to get a bit of a decrease in temperature as we humidify. So those are the two main categories for humidifiers, adiabatic and isothermal. Looking at the types, industrial isothermal humidifiers, if you have live steam from a boiler on hand, you can choose the top left there, steam exchange system, or the top right, a live steam system. A very ubiquitous product is down here, the electrode humidifier, anywhere that has electricity, which is everywhere. That electrode humidifier is a good option. Some other isothermal humidifiers, resistive element humidifiers on the far left, infrared steam, or gas-fired if you have that available. Conversely, the adiabatic category has things like compressed air with nozzles, ultrasonic, some other flavors of nozzles, or a rigid media type humidifier. So in conclusion, you guys are now experts on humidity, absolute versus relative. We looked at the ideal range, 35 to 60 or 40 to 60% RH. Isothermal humidification adds no heat to the system, but arrives at our design set points. Meanwhile, adiabatic decreases the temperature a little bit. So with that, if there are any questions, we can continue on with that. All right, thank you guys for your time.
So we'll start the dinner portion. The buffet line runs from my right to my left through the door and in around. So logically we will start with the table to my far right. Once that table's finished, proceed across the room. Enjoy your dinner and we'll start the presentation towards the end of See, the screen is a little bit askew from the lines in the room, and we have a few spots that have opened up in the middle, so if you want to get a better view, feel free to shuffle from the outsides to the middle so you can see what you need to. Before we start the presentation, we're going to have the draw for the Sends Leaves tickets, so get your tickets out, and we'll ask Max to make the draw. Absolutely. And it's mine. The winner is 758250. 758250.
How about that?
I don't believe that.
Thanks, Max.
Yay, Adam Moons, my brother.
Thanks.
Go together.
And again, thanks to Kathy Godden and SK Sheet Metal for donating the tickets. It goes a long way to ASHRAE Research Promotion when we get these raffle prizes for no cost. So their support really means the world for us. $520. So without further ado, the program that we're going to be creating this evening is the dark side of ASHRAE. Our speaker is Max Sherman. Max is with the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, where he runs the energy performance of buildings groups. His research career has spanned over 25 years and about 200 articles. So involved with ASHRAE for a long time, but very learned gentleman. And I'll pass it on to Max.
Before we begin, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to apologize because at least half of you are going to hear more than you want to hear about ASHRAE. Because that's basically what today's talk is about the parts of ASHRAE that most of you don't see. And you're going to learn about them probably more than you want to, but don't say you weren't warned. So, who I am? So I've been around a long time in ASHRAE. That thing said 25 years. I wrote that some years ago. I should really update it. I was a student member in 1979. So I've been around a long time in ASHRAE. I've served on lots of different committees, councils, gotten bunches of the awards. I've been on the board of directors. Most of my talks are actually technical. I do research. I work at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab. I do research on smaller buildings and on air quality, ventilation, that sort of thing. But today I'm here really only as an ASHRAE and not as anything technical. Fortunately, we've heard a bunch of technical things about humidification today, so I think maybe you can stand a little non-technical stuff. Let me see a little bit about who's here. So how many consulting engineers do we have? Good share. How many architects? Ooh, none. Okay, say the architect Jones. So how many people from the public sector? Right here. So how many people who sell stuff to any of the people who've already raised their hands? All right, but the most important thing is how many people here are ASHRAE members? Good. Now let's see the other hands. Who's not an ASHRAE member? All right, take down their name. We're going to be talking. So for you members, you're going to hear about stuff that a lot of you don't know because you mostly come to chapter meetings and you don't spend a lot of time in society meetings. For you potentially new members, I'm going to scare you by telling you all sorts of things about ASHRAE, and if you don't run away, then you ought to join. So I think this should be some of those. Okay, so the dark side sounds really sinister, and that's of course a bit on purpose. But it's a phrase that was coined by Ross Montgomery, who was a vice president of the society not too long ago. And the reason I called it the dark side is he came up in his ASHRAE career through the chapters. He worked very hard in the chapters. He never knew all the stuff that happens at the society level meetings. And so to him it was dark. He didn't know what it was. And so that was the dark side to him. Now I'm a dark sider. I came up through the dark side being a researcher in that I came to the society meetings, I gave papers, I went to committees. So how many people here have been on a committee at society level? Okay. You guys are you're the dark siders, you two or three of you. And the rest of you are kind of light siders. That is, you've come up through the chapter. And I'm going to mostly focus on the stuff that you don't learn so much here from the chapter, but you'll see what happens as we shine some light on the dark side. And we're going to learn that the dark side and the light side aren't really that far apart, although each other tend to tease each other a lot in society meetings. So let's first start with what is ASHRAE, the society as a whole. The purpose of ASHRAE, the reason it exists is its mission to advance the arts and sciences of heating, ventilating, air conditioning, and refrigeration to serve humanity and promote a sustainable world. So that's why ASHRAE exists. ASHRAE does not exist to make its members money. ASHRAE does not exist to advance technology for the industry. It works for the betterment of mankind. It's a sustainable goal. That's its mission. So we have to keep that in mind always when we're doing ASHRAE work. And we have a vision as well in ASHRAE, which is what we want ASHRAE to become. And that is to become become a leader in the industry, not just in the US, not just in North America, but worldwide. ASHRAE has a vision to be a global leader. And this is kind of interesting. This is something that's changed around the turn of the century, really. I like to use that phrase. And it's because before that, ASHRAE was much more of an inward-looking group that was there to support its members and to do things for the good of its members, even though it had that mission, has always been our mission. But the board of directors decided to change the society to be more forward-looking. Now, it still moves slowly, so we're here only 14 years later and we're not quite done with that transition. But it was definitely a change in view, and you're going to see some of that. If you've been involved with ASHRAE for a long time, you'll recognize some of the change. ASHRAE has a set of core values that hopefully will come up momentarily. So the way we execute our mission and vision, if this doesn't work, we're going to be in trouble. Here we go. The way we execute our mission and vision in ASHRAE is using some core values. And these core values, this presentation on core values is actually something you can get at the ASHRAE website. So this presentation isn't mine, it's ASHRAE's, and I'm showing it to you here. So any society, any professional society has to have a set of core values whereby it does its mission and achieves its vision. ASHRAE has 5: excellence, commitment, integrity, collaboration, and volunteerism. I'm going to quickly go through each of these 5 core values because this is what we as ASHRAE members stand for. Excellence is number 1. So ASHRAE's products are to be excellent and always the best practices and always continuous improvement. So it's not good enough to be good enough, we have to be excellent. Second, commitment. ASHRAE expects its members to be committed to all of these things and to advance them and to be passionate about achieving them. Integrity. So we should go about our business in a high level of ethical standards. I'm going to get back to what those ethical standards are in a minute, but integrity requires transparency and observing the essential requirements of what you're doing. Collaboration. ASHRAE attempts to be very collaborative, and we saw, and as you've seen, sometimes that leads to a merger. And it collaborates with other groups and organizations. We all know that there are a bunch of groups, and I'll talk about how we've done that. And finally, volunteerism. So ASHRAE could not exist without its volunteers. ASHRAE is a volunteer-driven society. There are many societies around that are staff-driven societies, where you pay your dues, it hires some staff, and they do stuff. Here, we are volunteer-driven. The board is volunteer, as are most of the positions. So that's what ASHRAE is. Now, I said that we have a code of ethics. Now, all of you who are members may not realize it, but you are legally bound because you signed a contract to this code of ethics. It's part of what you signed when you first became a member of ASHRAE. So I want to go through them somewhat quickly for what is that code of ethics, because it's important to realize that when we do our job as ASHRAE members, we have to be achieving these ethics. First of all, at all times, it should be directed to enhancing public health, safety, and welfare. Again, our mission is public, not private, not individual, not personal. It's public. Second of all, our members should be standards of the world, good stewards of the world's resources. So sustainability is part of our ethics. Managing those resources, being efficient, not wasting stuff, that's part of our ethical responsibilities as ASHRAE members. Our products and services are only to be offered in the areas where they make sense. That is, just because you're an ASHRAE member, you shouldn't go around and try to sell plumbing parts, because that's not what we do as ASHRAE. We have to use our knowledge, our skills, our positions in the way it makes sense. Care and competence in all activities, up-to-date knowledge and skills. So this is a requirement, an ethical requirement for you to stay current in whatever your field is. You're supposed to know, ethically know, what the latest is in the technology or the industry or the piece of the profession that you are in. And ASHRAE helps you achieve that, as we'll talk about later. Conflicts of interest, you have to avoid them. You have to be honest and transparent about them when there are conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest. You have to respect confidentiality, that is when you get some information from a client, from a customer, from an industry, you must keep that confidence and not share it with their competitors or use it to your personal advantage. Each member is expected and encouraged to be committed to this code of ethics in such a way that you promulgate it. So it's a little bit like a religion in the sense that ASHRAE expects you to not only follow this code of ethics, but to promulgate it. Finally, and this one is relatively new addition to the code of ethics, and it has to do with ASHRAE going global, that activities crossing national boundaries should respect the ethics of that particular country. ASHRAE is going global, and while the ethics of the US and Canada are pretty close to each other, there's a lot of countries in the world that don't use the same set of ethics we do, and you have to act responsibly in the country for which you are doing the work. So that's the code of ethics. Now, which part of ASHRAE are dark and light? Well, I'll talk about the different pieces of ASHRAE. There's a business side to ASHRAE. ASHRAE is mostly a not-for-profit organization, but we do have a small piece of ASHRAE, which is a profit-making organization, and that is our publications section. So the courses that we teach, the publications that we sell, are technically profit-making. Now, they never actually make a net profit, fortunately, but they are a separate business organization that has to be treated like that. The lightest side of ASHRAE is right here. The members themselves, what happens at the chapter, people talking to people, a grassroots organization. ASHRAE is a grassroots organization. We have members, and members network. There are many organizations like that. That's the light side of it. And of course, it runs on the volunteer efforts of the people you've seen up here today who are making your chapter run. The darker side of ASHRAE is mostly the technology and the policy that's generated from that. That happens at the society level meetings. And that's where the research, the standards, the handbook, that's where the impacts of the HVDC and R happen. I'm going to talk more about that because most of you guys don't know a lot about that. And of course, all of that comes together in what I call the gray side of ASHRAE, our board of directors, where the light side and the dark side kind of come together. So this is an organization chart of ASHRAE with the bodies that ASHRAE has in it. I'm not going to go through them individually, but this column, the bottom left column is all the things that you probably have some experience with as you go through your chapter meeting. So that is research promotion, membership promotion, technology transfer, the program that I'm here, distinguished lecturers. That all happens in a group called Members Council. There are 3 councils of society, that's the 3 orange on the bottom, that organize different pieces. All 3 report to the board of directors in the center there. Members Council is the one that is most responsible for what happens at chapter meetings. On the right-hand side on the bottom is the communications section. That's all the publications and education stuff that the society does. That's the business side of it. In the middle on the bottom is the technology, or technology council. That's probably the darkest side of ASHRAE right there, and that's because that's where we have all of the technology. That's what makes ASHRAE special, of course. Every membership organization supports its members with things like membership promotion and networking and things like that. But of course, the thing that is unique to ASHRAE is the HVC and R technology. And that's what happens within Technology Council at the society level. Now, the board of directors is up there in the middle, and it reports only to the ASHRAE membership. It has a bunch of committees that help support it, like the Finance Committee and Rules Committee and things like that. So there are 27 committees, not counting the CRCs. Because, how many have ever been to a CRC, by the way? Good fraction of you. Okay, you're getting a little gray. So the CRCs are the regions. That's what organizes it. And if you've been to one, you think that CRC stands for Chapter Regional Conference, but actually in ASHRAE legal, CRC is a Chapter Regional Committee, of which there are 14, one for each region. So there are a bunch of controlling documents that make ASHRAE be put together. That is, a different level of documents. At the highest level is the legal documents. We usually call it the Articles of Consolidation because it's the legal documents that merge various groups together and the legal documentation that allows it to exist in the US and Canada. That's why we exist from a legal standpoint. But there's a society bylaws. This is the contract between the members and the society. The society bylaws can only be changed by the members, not by any part of the board or the society as a whole. And it says what we as members expect from our society. It says what we must do, what defines what a member is, defines what the board of directors must consist of, and sort of one of the last things it does is tell the board of directors it can do whatever it wants that's consistent with the bylaws. So it empowers the board of directors. And the board of directors then writes the rules of the board. This is a 3-inch thick document full of rules, right? We're engineers, we like rules. So we write lots and lots of rules that set up what all those committees do, what they're empowered to do, how we do what we do, and within the scope of the bylaws. Then each of those committees, and for that matter, the chapters as well, have what's called a manual of procedure, or a MOP in ASHRAE lingo, which describes how to execute those rules from the board of directors. So those are the documents that we all have to live with. So now what I'm going to do is talk about all of these chunks that we do to advance the state of the art in the arts and sciences of HVC and R, because these are the 3 most important pieces. No, it's not the end. I'm sorry. Yeah, way too much. Help.
Good job, George.
Okay, so publications. As I said, that's the business side of ASHRAE, but it's also the way that we get the information that was generated by the technical parts of the house. So one piece which is coming out very soon, which might be relevant to you guys here at Region 2, is there's a cold climate design guide, which is actually an output of a conference that was held in Calgary in 2012, and it generated this guide. So this guide will be available to you hopefully in January 2015. I think it's to be released at or around the time of the winter meeting this year. But the most important publication of ASHRAE is its handbook. ASHRAE's been writing the handbook since the early 20s, so roughly 90 years ago, where it started off with when the 2 societies joined, that is the heating and ventilating engineers joined each other, started writing the handbook. The handbook is the thing that's been around forever. It's what defines what it means to be an HVACR engineer. All of the information is in the handbook, and it's treated as an authority in courts of law, and people use it to resolve all sorts of conflicts. How that handbook is maintained is by the technical committees. The technical committees do a bunch of stuff. How many people here have served on a technical committee at ASHRAE? One dark side. So these technical committees manage one of their jobs is keeping the handbook current. So it comes in 4 volumes, as you probably know, and 1 volume each year is reissued, so they're roughly on a 4-year cycle for each volume. Each chapter in it is assigned to one technical committee, whose job it is to keep it current. And of course, it comes both in each and then conversions for those who still use internet. So there's also terminology guide. Has anybody ever used a terminology guide? And hardly anybody knows it exists. It's actually pretty good. And now it's online. So it wasn't paperbacks. I don't think they put it in. I don't think it's printed anymore. It's now completely online. I have to check. But it helps define what words mean. So you may want to look at that. A lot of free resources. A lot of the publications, of course, cost money. But the board of directors regularly makes a bunch of them for free. This is one reason why I don't actually make net profit, because the board is forever putting ones for free because it feels that it's better for society, better for the profession if these are freely available. Here's a set of things that are free and you can get online at the website. The Advanced Energy Design Guide and the Air Quality Guide are big sellers. People really appreciated those. How many have ever read one of those? Oh, good, much. So I would encourage you to look for any of those. Let's get back. Education is also important. Many of you have probably taken advantage of ASHRAE's Learning Institute, which is what we call the education that ASHRAE offers. So one of the key things to remember is these courses are taught by engineers for engineers. These aren't professional teachers teaching these are ASHRAE members, often volunteering their time to put stuff together to teach other engineers about the technology. And the intent is to allow people to use this stuff right away. So these are 4 different series that we talk about. Professional development seminars is a couple of examples of those. How many have ever been to one of those? Those are all-day professional development seminars. Okay. Short courses, how many have been to those? A couple of people. Those typically are half-day courses that cover not quite as much. Online courses, there's some in the spring and fall. Anybody ever go to one of those? Not a couple of those. And then there's also intensive design workshops. These are multi-day things for really getting detailed into the essentials and applications of different things. Often, how to use a standard. So typical things would be great. Anybody attend one of those? Oh, great. Okay, all right. E-learning, of course, is the new thing. And ASHRAE is trying to grab it a lot, trying to figure out how best to do it. This allows you to do it at your own pace, the way you want to do it. I've got a subscription for a year to all the e-learning activities. How many people take advantage of that? Certification. This was once a very controversial activity. When I was on the board, there were great debates that ASHRAE shouldn't get involved in certification. It was legally challenging. Weaken the ASHRAE brand. But those days are behind us now. There's 6 different certifications that one can get through ASHRAE. How many people take advantage of that? You should. Become an ASHRAE certified engineer. And and we're doing it with relevant other organizations. If possible. I sense that in your air quality one in the future. I don't know what makes me think that. Scholarships. We have a bunch of the scholarships. I'll come back to that in the chapter level. But there's over 2 dozen different scholarships that you can have with ASHRAE. By the way, if you're looking for ASHRAE publications, there's little booklets like this that have them, but of course you can find everything you need to know on the web. Okay, technologies, the side of technology is probably the stuff most of you guys know the least about, because it happens most at society levels and it happens in dark little rooms, chopped up into pieces. But altogether, it's pretty impressive. So ASHRAE writes standards. I'm sure all of you have used one or more ASHRAE standards, even when you do work. We've been writing standards since 1922, when we, same time when we, the two organizations joined. We currently have about 130 active standards. It kind of changes all the time, but that gives you a scale of the standards and guidelines that we have. There's probably less than a dozen that are big standards, they're key standards, but we have over 130. Anybody here use BACnet? A couple of people. So that's one of them, and I believe it's coming on its 20th anniversary. So standards are required to be reviewed and updated regularly. This is part of the stuff that happens in society meetings. People maintain them, have to keep them up to date. And any of the standards which are intended for use by code bodies have to be on a 3-year review cycle. Other standards can be on a longer 2 to 5 years. So in the United States, there's only one body that's allowed to write American national standards, and I think there might only be one. But it's ANSI in the U.S., the American National Standards Institute. But ANSI gives standards writing organizations the right to write standards as approved by ANSI. There are only 6 organizations in the U.S. that are allowed to write their own standards with ANSI's blessing. These are called audit designators, and ASHRAE is one of those 6 because ASHRAE's procedures for standards are some of the best in the world at how to write standards. They're not always the quickest, but they are very good standards, and I say that in part because I was once chairman of the standards committee, so it's in my contract. But we use consensus process as the key to writing good standards, and this is what will take a long time. So often our standards take a while to go through, but they're pretty good standards. But again, they're all written by volunteers, people just like you guys who show up to try to make the standard better. So here are probably the most well-recognized standards we have in the society. From refrigeration to thermal comfort to ventilation to energy efficiency. I am responsible for 62.2. That was I was chairman of the committee who wrote the first version of that back in 2003. So that's the one I'm most partial to. But I'm sure all of us have our favorites. We currently have about 200 standards in process. So I said there were about 130 active ones. So that means there are 70 that are either currently dormant because they're not in the review period or are being written, being developed. Okay, ASHRAE research has been around slightly longer than ASHRAE standard. Anybody recognize the name F. Paul Anderson? So F. Paul Anderson, that's sort of an award that's given out. It's the F. Paul Anderson Award, one of the big awards in society. He was, in fact, the first owner, if you will, of ASHRAE research. He ran the ASHRAE research laboratory. We used to have a research laboratory where we conducted research. Now we give research out, contracts out. But before we had a research laboratory, and we were the only organization doing research in HPC. So this was a very big deal, and it's at the core of what ASHRAE is to do research. Now the budget that ASHRAE has for research is significant, but it's small compared to the total amount of research that happens funded privately and publicly. But ASHRAE research is very important for getting a lot of stuff done. Now, in one of my other DL talks, I have a bunch of cute pictures of people like F. Paul Anderson, and one of them shows this scrawny little kid dressed up as a wet bulb thermometer that was working for F. Paul Anderson. That scrawny little kid's name is Willis Carey. I think probably all of you know who he is. So we have the importance of ASHRAE research. As I said, it's focusing on ASHRAE's needs now. And that allows us to keep our handbooks, our standards up to date, fill in the gaps both in technology and data that the larger HPC or community doesn't do. So whoever's RP chair can use all of these remarks to try to generate a little bit more money from everybody. I thought you might be interested in some of the stuff that's happening in Region 2 right now. You have almost $700,000 in active research projects that are funded here somewhere in Region 2. Here's a list of some of them and where the research is happening. So it's a pretty active region in the sense of having research providers who help ASHRAE do its research. We have a lot of grants and aids, so these are grants to students working on things that the GI stands for. So there's a fair amount of those that are happening here in Region 2. There's about $30,000 worth of grants and aids that are recently completed or are just soon to be complete here. Oh, and that was Region 11 has $30,000 worth of total research. So I just thought you'd like to know that those Western Canadians aren't as good as Eastern Canadians at generating good research, in case there's any competition. Okay, TCs. We already know we have 1 or 2 of you who have served on TCs, but there's over 4,000 volunteers who attend TC meetings. These happen to be winter and annual meetings. Not all of them are from North America, too. Over 10% come from across an ocean, basically, to come to ASHRAE to contribute. Program, how many people have attended the winter annual meeting? There's a program of technical work that's presented, and that program of technical work, over 2/3 of it is produced by the technical committees who find the talks, do the papers, do the work it takes to present to the members what the technical activities are. As I said before, the handbook chapters, which are over 200, are maintained by these technical committees. All the active research projects are overseen by technical committees. So technical committees are a really great way to get involved in ASHRAE at the society level. Believe me, all you have to do is show up to a technical committee and they'll find a role for you. So the technical committees are separated into sections on different topics. So they're grouped together as select committees, and these are the different sections. And if you're an ASHRAE member, at least one of those sections applies to your blood. So if you have an opportunity to go to an ASHRAE meeting, you'll want to go to the Balmy South, go to Chicago this January, stop by and thank you. Building Energy Quotient, BEQ, is a major new activity for ASHRAE. It's essentially a report card on buildings, and this is primarily pushed by David Underwood, a Canadian, and he's president-elect, of course, of ASHRAE. So this is one of the things that he managed to push quite strongly over the last several years. So if you have been to a CRC, how many people have been to CRC? If you've been to CRC, there's a point at one of the lunches where a vice president usually gets up and tells you what's happening to you in ASHRAE. And I stole the talk for you here today. So this is an indication of the things which are happening right now in our society that are changing and are considered the important stuff. Of course, IAQA is number 1 on that list. The merger with IAQA is something that hasn't happened in a long time, and society is very focused on that. It's a way of continuing to evolve, but Don's already talked much about that, so I won't talk much more. The other biggest thing that happened is there's a brand new strategic plan. Now, strategic planning in ASHRAE always exists, and it has gone on since I've been involved with ASHRAE, and it goes through 2 phases. Phases where it's ignored and phases where it's important. And it's become important again. So there's a brand new strategic plan. Put this online for those who want to see it. I'm going to show you what's in it in a second. But they spent some time in how to take ASHRAE to the next level, how to make it evolve, and they came up with a bunch of programs. So there are 5 new initiatives across the top. You probably can't read them. But the first 2 have to do with making ASHRAE itself more responsive. Actually, the first 3. The 4th one is important because it's really to take ASHRAE global. That's become one of the 5 big areas that ASHRAE is pushing. This mobile. The fifth one is important to me, and I'll tell you about in a second, and that's ASHRAE is going residential. That is, ASHRAE is raising there are the 5 goals and 10 objectives, just like you expect in any strategic plan. You can read all those details. I won't subject you to too much more there, but I'll talk about some of them in a second. If you want to get more information on it, again, you can go to the website /strategic plan, and you can find out all this information, including that. So if you go to the website /residential, you'll find out about ASHRAE's new residential emphasis. I currently chair a presidential ad hoc committee on residential, and our job is to define how ASHRAE is going to advance the residential sector for the society. Only about 40% of the members actually identify their practice as being primarily residential. So if you look at those numbers, you say, well, why is ASHRAE getting involved? And the reason why ASHRAE is getting involved is we're here to help society in the indoor environment. And people spend more time in residential environments than anything else. There's more HVACR systems in residential than anywhere else. The difference is they're small and that they're not designed individually by consultant engineers. That's why we haven't done a lot in the past. But if we want ASHRAE to be recognized globally, if we want ASHRAE to be recognized to the general public, we have to communicate with them in a way that they understand and everybody understands at all. So enough of a pitch for that. There are several council initiatives. Remember, the board has 3 councils, 3 arms of the board where it does stuff. Members Council, which is the one that handles chapters, is doing a bunch of stuff. It's reviewing organization policy, because a lot of what we do seems sometimes get stuck in that particular policy, so that we can do a little bit more marketing for ASHRAE rather than the company. Looking at new ways to communicate to chapters themselves to get some of the dark side information to you guys down here in the chat. And looking at the CRCs to try to make them more functional. Only a small fraction of you have ever been to the CRC, but yet they're supposed to be for the region. So these are all things that are being looked at. They're developing programs for other kinds of people in ASHRAE than engineers, I guess I should say. That engineers are the core of what ASHRAE is, but we want to reach out to other kinds of people, building facility owners and operators. One example, residential contractors is another example. And so the Publishing and Education Council is looking into how to outreach to other markets. How many of you have ever used the ASHRAE Exchange? How many know what it is? Okay, not very many of you. This is ASHRAE's attempt essentially at social media. This is a way for engineers to talk with each other about ASHRAE stuff, as social media is doing. I encourage you to try it out, ASHRAExchange.org, but not this week. It's having a bit of a problem. So, but next week, try it. It should be working, and it already has lots of threads, lots of information, and the biggest user of it was our past president, Bill Butler. So there's a lot of this stuff that he started. I suggest checking it out next week. So the Learning Institute, these are the courses. This is a bunch of new seminars and short courses that are coming your way. These are all either out now or very soon to be out in response to some of this objectives. More e-learning, more instructor-led stuff. A lot of courses are coming your way. I hope you keep track of what's happening to see in your particular area what's of interest. How many people have tried to use an ASHRAE standard? How many people are pissed that it changes everything? A lot of people are, and unfortunately it has to stay current. But in order to respond to that, ASHRAE is going to have red-line strikeout versions of the standard. So when it publishes the next one, you can see how it changed from the last one. So at least you know what it is that you have to pay attention to when you're Code interactions. One of the ways ASHRAE makes a big dent in things is when its standards get adopted as regulation in code. And we have a group called Code Interaction Subcommittee of Standards whose job it is to try to promulgate our standards into code. This is something that we're being much more active and one of the things that we want to do is use the chapters as a mechanism for doing this. And there's a relatively new grassroots committee to government affairs, which is supposed to be involved in that. I don't know if you guys are doing anything. Scholarships, there's a bunch of new ways of doing scholarships. Chapters can now endow scholarships themselves. So for the low price of $60,000, probably US, you can have the Ottawa-Valley chapter scholarship run through by ASHRAE. That's a bargain price because if you're not a chapter, it's $100,000. This is just a list of some of the things that are coming up that you might be interested in. It is already too cold to come down to Mexico City for the expo that's down there. There's a bunch of other conferences, and if it's too warm, you can wait until January to go down to Chicago or nice and cold. And then, of course, we'll have next summer there'll be the annual conference in Atlanta at ASHRAE. You see the ASHRAE building. All right. So I just want to emphasize a bit that ASHRAE is run again by volunteers. We are the volunteers, people who spend their time, are the ones who make things happen. Every time somebody does this, it's surprising, but there's millions of dollars a year of labor that's put into ASHRAE volunteer work, just at the society level alone. And that vastly overshadows the budget that we have to pay for staff. So the staff works for the volunteers, and the volunteers are representing interests in matters. There's a huge return on investment for volunteering in ASHRAE. Different people find it in different ways. Some people just want to be part of ASHRAE's mission and vision, be part of something bigger, to help make that happen. So that's a personal return on investment. Some want to help affect how the society evolves, part of the change, part of deciding where ASHRAE is going. Some want to do it to get leadership training, that is to learn how to be part of the community, how to make things happen in a group, how to be part of a consensus, how to run meetings, how to reach consensus. These are all things that you learn as you get involved in volunteering for ASHRAE. So I would encourage those of you who haven't to either become involved in that series chapter or to consider going to the society level. Now, I've been talking about the light side and the dark side, and we had sort of a good-natured battle. The light side is here, chapter meeting, all the way up to your chapter regional conference, and where you have a regional chair who's also a member of the board of directors. On the dark side, the technical committee and the technical program are the biggest things that people recognize, and from them we get standard projects, we get the standing administrative bodies of ASHRAE are selected from all of these groups, and eventually it all comes together in the councils and the board of directors. But Abraham Lincoln once said, "A house divided cannot stand," so it's really not good to think of the dark side and the light side as being separate. Now, this slide is actually from my DL I give on duct tape, but it applies to the society as well. So ASHRAE is like a force. It has a light side and a dark side, and it binds the universe together. And that's kind of true about ASHRAE and HVAC as it is with duct tape. So we have now a choice on how to proceed. How many people want to know everything there's to know about Robert's Rules of Order? One? We have one? You can stay late. Everybody else can stay late. It sounds like we're not going to do that. But what I am going to do is say ASHRAE runs on Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order is a very good thing to learn because it helps you in what you do. If you and your company use committees to try and get work done, you use rules of order even if you don't know you're using rules of order. ASHRAE has rules, of course, being engineers. This is the book of ASHRAE Rules of Order, how to run a meeting. It seems daunting. It's not really that hard. It's actually kind of simple once you actually understand what's going on. I will leave these for the chapter rather than spend a whole bunch of time giving them to you. So I think I will instead skip a little bit of a summary and leave more time. Leave more time for discussion. Okay, so what I want to do is basically give you a quick summary of all the things I said, but I'm going to say them in a different way, and there's a takeaway message here that hopefully you all will understand a slightly different way, and that is how it's all about this society that we have. So I'll start over again with a sense that we were founded in 1894, so we've been around a long time. We were the first society, that was the ventilation engineers, by the way, who started pushing along then. And then eventually we had air conditioning, we had refrigeration, and we had, quite recently, air quality. So that was how we grew. We are 53,000 and growing members in over 130 countries. 5,500 roughly here in Canada. We have over 5,000 student members, and who's the Yay chairman? Do we have one? Anyway, this is the growth for us. We're getting more and more young people involved in ASHRAE, which is really good because 10, 20 years ago we were really worried that ASHRAE was getting very, very old. The average age was going up about 10 months a year, so it kind of meant, you know, that nobody was coming in at the bottom. That's changing. We cover the world in 14 regions. So there's 14 regions of ASHRAE, 13 of which are fixed, and then we have a region at large that basically covers the rest of the world. 175 chapters just like this one. Some are big, some are small. So yesterday I was in the Montreal chapter. That's the biggest chapter meeting. That's the biggest chapter meeting I've ever been to, over 150 people. Even though my own chapter is bigger than the Montreal chapter, we don't have that many people. However, that wasn't the highest percentage chapter meeting I've ever been to. If we go all the way out west in Canada, I was in the Victoria Island chapter. They had 18 people show up, but I think they only had 22 members in the whole chapter, so that was really good. There are 16 chapters in Canada, going from sea to shining sea, and 312 student branches. How many branches you got here? There we go. 3 student branches, all right. Depends on the year, okay. So we're mostly consulting engineers, which makes sense, of course. But we've got contractors, manufacturers, reps, public sector people, and even some architects, but apparently they don't show up here. So, and as I said, roughly 43,000 in the U.S., 5,300 in Canada, almost 10,000 everywhere else. So these are key benefits that it's important to keep in mind of what that is. We serve as a pipeline between technology and our network. And that's really important. That's how we're achieving our mission and our vision. Through that pipeline, which is through the technology, through the education, and through the networking, which happens not only at the chapter level, but also at the state. And how do we do this? Well, we have 27 standing committees, plus 14 CRCs. Those are the management bodies of the society. They all work on the board. 130 standards, as I said, over 100 technical committees, 120 at the moment, but it varies. We have over 300 publications that are available to be had, 6 certification programs, over 100 educational courses, and all of that research that gets presented and done that helps the industry. So these are the things that we do. So what makes us different from a lot of things? We're a membership organization, and lots of membership organizations. We have a global membership. There's not too many people that have a global membership. We are the people who create the built environment, the indoor environment. That is us. We have the largest publishing in the engineering field, bigger than ASME. So it's kind of important. We've had that history. And we're one of the few HVAC&R organizations that does their own research. We started off doing research. We're going to continue doing research. It's one of the themes. As I mentioned before, collaboration is important. We have an Associate Society Alliance that was created in 1962. And the idea was that we make alliances with organizations that have similar interests to ours, and then we coordinate. There are 58 members, and you can see the shaded countries that they are. Some of them are directly HVAC&R organizations, some are a little bit different. But they meet once a year at the ASHRAE winter meeting and get together countries. So, membership benefits for those of you who are still not convinced that you want to join. You get a lot of these professional development opportunities. You get the handbook. You get a lot of information, and you get networking. You get to be part of something, and I think that's really important. The communication is important. That's why we're going to get ASHRAE Exchange to get fixed next week, and keep it going. We think that social media is here to stay, and so ASHRAE is investing in it. And with that, I think I'll stop now and leave some time for questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering when's ASHRAE coming back to Canada for its annual meeting?
There is a schedule of when the meetings are. I don't know offhand. What was it, 3 years ago it was in Montreal?
4 years ago.
4 years ago? Something like that. I doubt seriously it's ever going to be the winter meeting. So, but I'm sure it's planned for a summer meeting, but I don't know when. But there is a list on the website of future meetings, so we can find it.
I can actually get to that. This year's CRC, Toronto's chapter's anniversary is on 2020. They've applied to host a summer meeting for that. We have a pretty strong representation at the high levels with the incoming president and also vice president. So no guarantees, but the expectation would be in 2020 to be hosted in Toronto.
You may mention this earlier, and I apologize if you did, but in terms of the overall growth of ASHRAE, you said younger people are coming in at the bottom and older people are retiring, I guess, and so on. Is it sustaining or is it actually growing in numbers?
It's finally growing again. It was, in 2007, 8, 9, it was shrinking a bit with the economy. There were problems, but it's growing again, and so the board is very pleased with this growth, and especially that it's growing at the bottom end with younger people getting involved, because they're going to be around for quite a while. So it is growing again. I don't know the growth rate offhand, but the board's happy.
I mentioned the codes and publications, and ASHRAE, it's like a money-making thing, but it probably doesn't really truly make money for them, but they're going to keep it going. Is there other organizations who are kind of going into that purely from the money aspect? NFPA seems to be ramping up the number of codes and publications they go after. Do we sort of feel threatened against it as they undermine?
Well, there's certain organizations, some that have initials like UL, some that have initials like ASTM, that basically derive all of their money through sales of standards. And they have a very different driving force. ASHRAE doesn't produce standards, it doesn't sell publications only for making money. It makes money, ASHRAE makes money when it can to help its mission. So that's why we don't make much money on publications. And that's why, believe it or not, you may think our standards are expensive, but they're cheaper than a lot of standards that sell them. So some organizations are, and NFPA is kind of half and half, are in it to make money, and some write the standards as a public benefit, but have to make some money on ASHRAE is more than that.
Can you tell us a bit about what you do at Lawrenceburg Labs?
Me? Sure. So I've been at LBL forever. I graduated with my PhD in physics in 1980 and was hired about that time. And since that time, I have been doing work on buildings, I guess you'd say. Not all of it is exactly HVAC. Air tightness is the thing that I was most involved with earlier in my career. And but air in all things has been what's involved. So if you've ever used the infiltration model, the infiltration ventilation chapter of the handbook, that was my dissertation in 1980, and I got the handbook as was there. So I've been involved in doing research for a long time. And ASHRAE, I got involved in ASHRAE because that's the mechanism for me to get my research used. So by bringing it to ASHRAE, getting it vetted through the process, getting it published, I could get the stuff that I did to make a big impact. And as a public sector researcher, that's what I'm interested in, is doing good research and things like that. So, it's, Andy Warhol said everybody gets 15 minutes of fame. My 15 minutes of fame was not on air tightness or ventilation or even air quality, it was on duct tape. So we did a study for the California utilities that showed that duct tape shouldn't be used on ducts, and this just took off as in the public media. So that's where I got famous, and that one duct tape slide that you saw was from my duct tape talk, which is much more entertaining than this one, I have to admit. But maybe it doesn't tell you as much about ASHRAE. Well, that phrase comes from the very beginning of ASHRAE in the arts and sciences, and what it really refers to is the fact that a lot of times we have to do things based on judgment, on what seems right to us as a whole, rather than being able to prove it with numbers. And so, for example, the ventilation rates in 62.1 and 62.2, there is no hard science to justify the rates that are there. Those rates are based on a bunch of people who have experience getting together and trying to feel the right number that is there. Now, we've gotten better and better over the years. We're corralling the number with some science, but we don't yet quite have it down. And there are lots of other examples where it's not pure science. Some of it is feeling, which is what I think the framers meant when they said the arts and sciences.
The publications, like ASHRAE is a little pocket book, I think, and in it there's information that looks like it came from Carrier like 10, 20 years earlier. How does ASHRAE kind of negotiate with a company to say, we like your stuff, we're going to take it? But how does that process work?
Well, ASHRAE won't take any copyright material without first asking. But what happens is that a lot of companies, well, at least in the old days, things have changed a little, but in the old days, companies would say, we did all this research. We think it's good. If you want it, we'll let you publish it. And then ASHRAE has, whichever technical committee is relevant, they decide whether or not they're going to take it and put it in the handbook. So indeed, especially in some of the older chapters, you'll see information that was generated by a trainer, a carrier, or somebody, but it was vetted by a body of ASHRAE members, not by a trainer, carrier, or whatever. That doesn't seem to happen as much anymore, but that is how it used to be. People, I do the same thing now as a researcher. If ASHRAE adopts my research paper, my results, I'm very happy because that means it's been accepted by the industry, so that's good. And individual companies are welcome to do the same. ASHRAE will take volunteerism anywhere it can. Now, you're not allowed to get credit for it. You can't say it came from you or this is Carrier. information. It's ASHRAE's information once it gets into ASHRAE.
Any other questions? No? Terrific. All right then. I'd like to thank Max for his time, his effort. Hopefully you all learn a little bit more about what ASHRAE is. I know we have a pretty vibrant local chapter, but there are places where we can be involved at society level. So if anyone wants to pursue those further, feel free to approach anybody on the board or in the executive. And I'd like to present Max with this token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
We have Royal Canadian Mint locally, and so this is one of their products, being a numismatist. I hope you know.
Thank you.
And it's easier to go on planes than boats. So with that, I'll wrap it up. To let you know, we are back at our typical venue next month. It is at the Hotel International on Algonquin's campus. It is the third Tuesday of the month, which I believe is the 21st, George, yep. Yes? And the topic will be new building design for high-rise applications. So that'll be coming out. You'll be able to see more information on that in the communique in a few weeks. Please sign up. Safe drive home, and thanks very much to everybody. Good night.